Hello, everyone. I'm RJ Kerr, and welcome back to Let's Write an Adventure, our ongoing live stream where we are creating adventures in real time. Specifically, right now, working on a much larger project. We're working on building out our own custom campaign from scratch, going over all the nuts and bolts, all the pieces and parts of it, and every step of the way to create a playable adventure, one that we can take to our tabletop and engage our players with. Um, this includes our own custom domain of Dread, which we are building from scratch as well. And so that we've got a completely homebrew world we're building out with this campaign so that we can have a truly original adventure. So, if this is your first time joining us, welcome. This is actually our 50th stream, which is exciting for me. Thank you guys so much for supporting me through 50 of these streams. I hope you've been enjoying them. Um, and so this particular adventure, this particular campaign, like I said, takes place in our own custom domain of Dread, which is set in around a large inland sea. And we have spent a little bit of time already creating an initial town on the edge of what was a ruined empire and is now the flooded basin of this inland sea, this town that we're calling Darkport. We have built out the first adventure for our player characters, in which they were kidnapped by a faction led by an aboleth and briefly enslaved, and then had to escape their captors. And in doing so, learned about the existence of a lost artifact which gives the possessor power over this domain of Dread. And the characters, of course, coming to uncover that this is probably their best way out of this world, their best way to escape. Now, of course, there'll be more to that, and we have built in some twists and turns as we go. But right now, we are working on building some of the adventures that they find themselves in as they start looking for this artifact to begin their investigation. As always, this is a collaborative live stream, so as you have your own thoughts, ideas, opinions, as we go through and we build stuff here and we're brainstorming and we're creating things from scratch, well, please jump into the chat. I love to hear that from you all. You guys come up with such creative content when we're doing this. I think some of the best parts of this world are straight out of your minds. So let's go ahead and dive in with that brief introduction. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Um, so as I mentioned, we were building out adventures for our characters to engage with as they begin investigating and looking for this artifact on their own. And so we took some time and we figured out some investigative scenes where they could pick up clues that would lead them to other investigative scenes and eventually towards the discovery of the location of the artifact, if not the artifact itself. Um, and we've set those up so that they can be many of them could be little mini adventures in of their own, to really add to some challenge and make gathering this information feel like it's been earned. One of those is the characters will learn that there is a treasure hunter out in this world that has perhaps some clues as to where this artifact might be located. And so they go seeking this treasure hunter, only to find them out in the field already investigating another dungeon that might be a clue in and of itself. Um, and then they, of course, have to interact and engage with this dungeon to find and link up with the treasure hunter. And so we began building that out, really working on that last time. Really, I should say, we did it I guess, 2 sessions ago. We started at the tail end there, and then in our last Wednesday session, which was shorter, we started building some of these out, some of the combat encounters of this particular dungeon out. Um, and we did a little bit of um, of work on the idea, the vibe, the premise, kind of what it is that we wanted to be creating here, um, as we were working our way through some of the combat encounters. So I had mentioned that I always start with the thing that is the most clear in my mind when I'm creating an adventure, whether that's the beginning, the middle, or the end. It doesn't really matter, but whatever it is that I can see in my mind's eye as I go about, or as I get started, is where I jump in. And so, what I saw for this one, or the image that I had in my mind of this, was the final. Um, uh, Sort of encounter with this treasure hunter, whom we're going to need to give a name at some point here. Um, but the idea was that this is a guy who is looking for the artifact for themselves. They don't want to give up this information, right? They have an invested interest in retaining as many of their secrets as possible. And so the characters encounter this treasure hunter just as they all kind of encounter the BBEG together. And so we have this combat encounter where the characters, one, have to defeat this BBEG, but they also have to protect the treasure hunter as they go. And that the treasure hunter is not exactly vested in the player character's safety whatsoever. And so this idea of sort of this contentious protection situation that once was resolved, that there would be a reason for the treasure hunter to give up a little bit of their information, feeling like they owe the characters, but still having this contentious interview at the end. And so we started with that, and we decided that since this is we kind of wanted to make the baddies here that populate this old outpost undead, a mix of undead and elementals, kind of as an homage to Ovander, our elemental villain who oversees this whole domain of dread. And so, since he's kind of a stormy sort of elemental, we got a lot of air and lightning and water with him, especially because of this taking place in and around an inland sea. Um, we decided that we would do a little bit of reskinning, and then our BBEG would be an Azure Sentinel, and that we would swap out all the fire damage and fire immunity for lightning to give them more of a storm feel and make them a quote unquote storm sentinel. And that we would do the same sort of thing for Magman, where we would swap out the fire damage and immunity for lightning, and again give them that kind of storm feel to them, and that would be the VBEG here. And that got me thinking, if we are building out one of the first adventures that the players are likely to really dig into as they begin exploring this world, that we really do want to make it as thematic as possible. We want to make it characteristic of Vonder and of some of the threats of this world, and really sort of lay the foundation for the sorts of things that characters are going to encounter later. And so I really kind of started imagining this place in my mind, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well as we build this out. But this being an ancient outpost that's maybe perhaps two towers or a cluster of towers that are connected by old stone bridges, and so that the encounters that are taking place here and the challenges we're facing are kind of elevated. They're kind of up in the air, and so we have a lot of windswept bridges and a lot of places for flying monsters, and a lot of exposure to the elements among crumbling stone. And so we get kind of that nature as the enemy kind of vibe here as well, as the player characters begin exploring this environment. Um, unless there's something else that you all had imagined when we were working on this, and something different that you think we should go with, I think that's kind of the vibe that we'll use here. So let's go ahead and document that. Of course, if you've got your own thoughts and your own input, please jump in the chat. Let me know. I do love to hear this stuff, and you guys come up with uh, such creative ideas. Um, I will say, bear in mind that we are building this, and we're balancing this adventure for 4 characters of second level, because this is likely to be one of the early adventures the characters jump into here. So as we come up with ideas, we want to keep second level characters in mind. All right, so the vibe. Um, the outpost is one of a cluster of uh, crumbling towers connected by wind-swept stone arch bridges. I want to say stone bridges. In my mind, they're kind of had that arch support underneath that connects them, so we kind of get some organic shapes to the stone. But I'm not sure that that's really terribly important in what we're doing here. It's just a facet of my own imagination of this. Um, the outpost is one of a cluster of clumbering towers, or I should say, we'll say it is a cluster of crumbling towers connected by windswept stone bridges, um, with many balconies and um, parapets. Yep, parapets. There we go. That are exposed to the elements, the atmosphere. The atmosphere is, let's say, preternaturally stormy, with roiling skies and arcs of purple lightning jumping between clouds. Rain is frequent, as if the heavens themselves are trying to wash clean the taint of this place. It's kind of the vibe that I get for this stormy atmosphere, up high, windswept, a lot of elemental exposure. Um, and so we were working on some of the encounters, that kind of be in line with that. And we're using a 5-room dungeon kind of format here because, again, this is just a small adventure. This isn't meant to be more than a session or so, in what the characters are engaging with here. And so we're trying to keep it pretty straightforward. Um, but of course, interesting, because the reward is going to be the clues they get from the treasure hunter. So let's go ahead and get some creatures in here. We were talking about um, having a gargoyle guardian somewhere in here, um, uh, and which would be 450 experience points of our 600 budget for a moderate difficulty encounter. And so I'm thinking, an encounter perhaps on one of these windswept bridges, with, of course, no railings on the side. This is high and dangerous, and there's blustering, blowing wind and rain that's pelting down, as the player characters are harried by gargoyles, and I'm thinking, in this case, perhaps mephits being up there. Maybe there's, because we can have some more flying kind of monsters that are there. Um, Now, we of course could change that up a little bit, and we could look at putting in maybe some undead that do. So we just have a flying gargoyle, and then we've got some undead that are doing battle toe to toe with them on the bridge. Um, and we could give the undead sort of an elemental theme to them. We could reskin. We could say these are skeletons that that have almost electrically, an electric charge kind of visually moving through them so that their bones glow and arc with the same kind of purple lightning that the storm animates. And perhaps a lightning strike is what animates them visually as they kind of lurch to life. Um, I I always like the idea of taking disparate kinds of monsters and kind of putting them together. The you know I think that it adds a level of interest to combat encounters, and it keeps it from being just a like, oh, we're fighting a whole bunch of elementals in this place. It keeps the characters, I think, on their toes without us having to, as DMs, have a dozen stat blocks that we need to have at our fingertips at any given time, or that we need to work with during any particular encounter. I think it just makes the encounters easier while keeping prep streamlined when we mix and match a couple different kinds of monsters. Um, I kind of like the skeleton idea. What do you all think? What if we have these electrically charged skeletons? I wasn't thinking about giving them lightning damage or anything along those lines, but making it more of just a visual element to them. Um, because then we could put what, three of them up on the bridge with this gargoyle that's swooping around, and we'll have a nice solid 600 XP points for creating our nice moderate difficulty encounter. Um, I think that would work really well. If you have thoughts, please jump in, let me know. But I like that idea there. So let's go ahead and add that, at least for the time being. Skeletons. Inhabit this wind-swept, railing-free, certainly not up to code, bridge. And one gargoyle through to inhabit this windswept, we should say protect this windswept. This windswept, railing-free bridge that spans the gap between two crumbling towers. As the characters approach, a lightning strike animates the skeletons and animates the skeletons, giving them a persistent electric charge. Okay. Oh, looks like we got our first comment here. We've got from Jonathan Frost. So the rooms are all figured separately for their XP values and not the entire dungeon. Can you make one room low and another high difficulty? Absolutely. And in fact, that's kind of what we're doing here. You could theoretically come up with a budget for the entire dungeon. But to be honest with you, that's going to be a lot harder than trying to come up with a budget for different rooms and varying the intensity and the difficulty of those. So one of the things that we're doing here, and I really like to do when I'm building out encounters like this, is vary the difficulty so that one room is a low difficulty encounter, another room is a medium, is moderate, and the boss is a high difficulty encounter. In fact, I usually save high difficulty encounters for important areas and climactic moments, and everything else tends to be low and medium difficulty encounters as the characters work their way through. Because it also encourages them to kind of keep exploring and not constantly go, well, we had an encounter, now let's take a short rest. Oh, we had an encounter, oh, it's time for a long rest. That kind of things, that kind of thing. Um, so we do that by building out XP budgets for each of the various rooms here. And so we're going to have an entryway that's going to be a low difficulty encounter. We've got our setback for the 5 room dungeon, which we're going to have as a moderate difficulty combat encounter in an interesting environment here. That bridge that can give the characters some options and make them want to move across, that kind of deal. And then we're going to have our high budget, our difficulty our difficult encounter as our climactic encounter with the big bad, where they also have to protect the treasure hunter. Um, and so that makes this a pretty simple 5 room dungeon. We're not really reinventing in the wheel here. We're not coming up with anything too wild and crazy, and yet it'll still feel like a challenging, engaging mini dungeon for our players as they go through. Um, so let's see. Here's the character's approach. Lightning strike animates the skeletons, giving them a persistent electrical charge. There we go. Cool. All right. So, what do we think should be kind of our little gatekeepers, our little low level difficulty encounter at the entrance to this place to kind of give us a feel and a vibe? Do we want to make it zombies and mephits? Do we want to make it a shadow or two? Do we want to make it just elementals? Um, what do we want to do here? What do you all think? And I'll give you my thoughts if you've got ideas of your own. After you've got some ideas of your own here, um, or I should say, as you come up with ideas of your own here. So let's see. For me, I'm not really feeling zombies as part of this place. Skeletons make sense to me. I like kind of the electrified animation of them. Um, Elementals certainly make sense to me here. Um, maybe a shadow as part of this encounter with a couple of mephits. We're doing low XP budget here, so we got 400 XP to spend. Shadow's going to be 100 XP. Um, Mephits are going to be individually anywhere between 50 and 100 themselves. Um, we don't need a whole lot of enemies as part of this, um, especially because we've only got 4. We're balancing this for 4 player characters. So let's take a look at some mephits here. Because I'm thinking maybe a shadow and a couple mephits is kind of where I'm going with this. But again, if as you have got some thoughts, jump in and let me know what you think. Um, let's see here. What kind of mephit? Maybe steam or smoke mephits could be interesting for this. Um, at the entryway to kind of our uh, this planar or this elemental themed dungeon here. It's very airy, very stormy. Um, the maybe even an ice mephit that could be interesting. Is kind of like sleeting rain kind of feel to it. Let's see what we kind of got with that. I off screen here have got D&D Beyond open. I've got the new Monster Manual, the 2024 Monster Manual stat blocks up here, and I'm just kind of perusing through them. I'm not going to share them on screen for intellectual property reasons, obviously, but you can follow along in the search engine on D&D Beyond if you have those. If you have the new Monster Manual. Um, so the ice mephits here have got fog cloud. That really kind of lines up with what we want to do here. Once per day, they can do fog cloud. Um, We've got Frost Breath, which we could, I just think thematically could work as kind of a storm sort of breath with this. We could change the damage type if we really wanted to, but I think cold works just as well. You know, a cold, stormy rain, kind of going with this. And then, of course, they've got their claw attacks. So I kind of like the ice methods for this. They're also 100 XP each, so they're the same as the Shadow. Um, so maybe what does the Shadow add to this? How are we going to add kind of the flavor of that in here? And do we want to have one shadow or two shadows? Let's take a look, but let's definitely have X number of ice methods. And X shadows, potentially multiple. Let's see here. Let's take a look at the shadow stat block as we go through. Again, the idea is to create an interesting encounter here, but this is a low difficulty one, so we don't want anything that's really gonna bang up the adventurers too bad. We want to give them a taste of what it is that they're going to encounter as they go through, and maybe hinder them a little bit here. Yeah, so Jonathan Frost says you could do ice and either steam or smoke methods. Yeah, absolutely, we could. Um, that's not a bad idea. It would give us more creatures within our budget, which is not a bad thing at all. Um, so let's consider that. Let's look at the shadow stat block real quick here and kind of see if that adds anything to this encounter, if that gives us anything else that gives a kind of a cool feel here. And if it doesn't, then we're going to scratch it. We're going to throw it out. If it does, then we'll consider keeping it in. So our shadow. Um, it's kind of amorphous. The shadow can move through space as narrow as 1 inch without expending extra movement to do so. Cool. Sunlight weakness. This is kind of a dreary gray place. Not a lot of sunlight here, so we don't have to worry about that necessarily. Um, its action, its attack is going to uh, does damage, necrotic damage, and increases strength score by 1d4. Um, hmm. I don't think that adds a whole lot to our entryway encounter. Um, but it could be worthwhile to toss into a brief list of random encounters that the characters might uh, have as they move through this complex. Um, Jonathan says, or you could change the damage to cold damage. Absolutely, we could. Um, but I'm thinking um, this the things like amorphous there and bonus action, which is shadow stealth. So while in dim light or darkness, the shadow takes the hide action. Um, it occurs to me that this is a predatory sort of undead, and I think it would be best if perhaps it lurked inside the uh, um, inside our outpost here, stalking our characters as they explore, as they move their way through. Oh, could you imagine? Okay, this is where my brain goes with this. Could you imagine kind of a scene where the shadow reveals itself and attacks, where you have the characters moving through kind of a darkish sort of room, and then there's a flash of lightning cast shadows on each of the characters, so they cast their shadows up on the walls there, and then there's one extra shadow among them, and then that's when it attacks. We just have that one moment of there are four of you and five shadows, and then the shadow attacks and begins the initiative, perhaps surprising our players or surprising our characters. Um, so maybe we'd make the shadow a random encounter sort of deal in here, or maybe it's something that we add into the general features as it hunts the characters through the facility, hunts the characters through the outpost. But I think at our entryway, going with a collection of different types of methods is going to give a good thematic opening to this. I think that's going to be better. Um, I think probably Steam methods. Let's take a look at their stat block. As opposed to smoke methods. And let's see here. Blurred form. Attack rolls against methods are made with disadvantage unless the method has an incapacitated condition. That's kind of cool. They do fire damage, but we can make these storm methods and have it be lightning damage so that they're distinct from our ice methods that are doing cold damage. And give them that same sort of storm breath. They've got a steam breath here where it's does a cone of fire damage. But maybe let's just do steam methods and give them lightning damage like we've done with some of the other things here. So we're gonna say storm methods, and we'll say that those are steam methods with lightning damage / immunity instead of fire. Cool. So those are little 50 XP kind of guys as we do this. And so we're looking at, let's see here. So we're probably looking at, with 400, 200 of these. 200 of these guys are going to be 4 of those. And we'll do 2 of these, and that gives us 400 XP. Jonathan says the breath cone could be a cone of wind, resist, or be knocked prone. Yeah, absolutely it could. The reason I won't go with lightning on this is that, one, it already does damage, and it already reduces the target's speed by 10 feet. And so it already has kind of a nicely balanced effect on there. And by just changing the damage type, we don't have to do much else to the stat block. We don't have to remember any changes. Yeah. So, and I could kind of see the lightning kind of clenching and freezing up muscles as it hits. I'm a big fan of doing less work on reskinning monsters if possible, especially when they're already nicely balanced creatures. So okay, so we got 2 ice methods and 4 of these little storm methods that we're making. So the steam methods with lightning damage and immunity instead of fire. Cool. So we've got some good combat encounters in here. Let's put a place for our random encounters. Actually, we don't need that down here. Let's put that in general features. We'll put that here. Counters, and we don't need that many here. This isn't a big place. So let's hit a table. Let's give our random encounters 1d4 because we don't need a ton. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to say stalking shadow. Let's just extend that over. Oh, I don't want to put cells over there. I want to extend that over. Counter 1d4. Cool. All right. Yeah. Okay. And we can add some more encounters kind of as we go, add a little bit more flavor to this. We are at about halftime here, and so real quick, I'm going to do a little shameless self plug here. So one of the things I do outside uh, doing my YouTube channel here is I do professional DMing on startplaying.games. And so if you are, a DM looking to get some time as a player, or if you're watching this and you're just interested in being a player, you're trying to find a new group, a gang of folks to play the game with, come and check out my games. I've got sessions for all levels. I've got a number of campaigns and some one shots in there as well. And then I do custom bookings too. So if you're not seeing an adventure or a campaign that kind of matches your schedule or what you're interested in, shoot me a note about doing a custom. Happy to run most modules that are out there. I'm happy to run one shots. I'm happy to do homebrew games, all that kind of stuff. But I just added a whole bunch of new open spaces to this. So I've got a lot of room for new adventures there, including a Ghost of Saltmarsh campaign. We've got a Learn to Play Lost Mine of Phandelver game. We've got Tomb of Annihilation, one of my very favorites. And then we've got some original one shots that I'm running. These are ones that I've written, and so if you want to see if my style of writing adventures actually works, you can hop into one of these games and see how it all shakes out. Hag Heist is uh, Hag Heist is a heist style adventure that takes place in and around a hag's cottage, as you might have guessed. And then The Haunting of Scalen's Moor is a point crawl Celtic horror one shot that goes through sort of a Highlands kind of environment, lots of undead and fae. Um, if you want to message me directly for this, or if you want to jump into one of my games, you can find all of my content for that at startplaying.games/gm/RJ Kerr. And all of that comes to me directly. If you message me there, I do get a notification about that, and we can chat directly. There's a whole messaging platform in there as well. If you want to take things off that platform, you can always get a hold of me at my email, and that's just rjkerr@gmail.com. That comes directly to me as well, and more than happy to get you directed on where I can help you out the best. Anyway, that is my shameless self plug. Thank you so much for sticking around with me through that. And let's go ahead and jump into the rest of creating our adventure tonight. Um, so, let's see here. So, we've got our sort of our combat encounters set up for this, which I think 3 for this level of this size of a dungeon is plenty. Like I said, we're doing kind of a 5-room dungeon. This shouldn't take more than a session. We'll probably add some non-encounter spaces when we work on the map for this, just kind of little spaces to explore and that kind of deal, to make this more than just 5 contiguous rooms. Um, but I think we need a puzzle of some kind, a puzzle or sometimes I'll refer to this as kind of the discovery room here, where it's about learning something, it's about gaining information, it's about figuring something out that helps you move forward. Um, and so it may not be the traditional puzzle door. Maybe it is the secret to defeating the BBEG or something along those lines. I in previous adventures, and it wouldn't work as well for this one, but in previous adventures, I've done ones where the puzzle is what you have to solve to get to the reward, and that you could bypass the puzzle to get to the BBEG and all that kind of stuff if you wanted to. But the puzzle is what separates the characters and their actual payout for the adventure. Um, in this one here, I haven't given this a lot of thought yet, to be honest. So if you've got some ideas for puzzles that we might work in here, or things that the characters might have to figure out as they go through this, please feel free to jump in. Um, so, um, let's think about the overall motif here, right? The vibe of this place. I'll put my face as much as nobody really cares to see it, but I will put my face back on the screen here as we do this, so you can see me talking as well as hear me talking. But let's think about the vibe, the motif of this place here. Lots of elemental undead, high reaches, crumbling towers, wind-swept walkways and bridges. Um, Something that stands between, yeah, something. It needs to be something, I think, that is a barrier, um, that either reveals important information, um, and uh, either reveals important information or is a relocking kind of door thing, because clearly the treasure hunter would have gotten through it if they got to the BBEG. If it's just a portal that kind of shuts down access, um, but if it's a puzzle, if it gives information, if it reveals something perhaps about the BBEG or the situation as a whole, it could be something that the treasure hunter never got through. Looks like we get another comment. Ben, this sounds interesting. Would love to watch this live, but I've got an early shoot tomorrow. Yep. We'll check it out tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us, Ben. It was good to have you here, and appreciate you sticking around. I hope you have a good one too, and feel free to leave comments on the video when you watch it in the recording. All right. Um, so I kind of like the idea of there being information that the characters learn from solving this puzzle. One of the nice things about doing that is that, you know, if your players just aren't getting it, they can still the adventure doesn't come to a dead stop, right? If there is a puzzle that they can bypass and they can move on to anything else, but maybe it gives them a boon. Maybe it gives them some sort of protection against our BBEG. Maybe there's a reward instead of information. Maybe it's a smaller reward that they gain. Maybe something like, potions of or a potion of lightning resistance or something along those lines that we could put in there. Um, I like to think about what the puzzle is hiding, because that's going to determine the kind of puzzle we have. Is it a gateway puzzle, meaning it blocks something off, or is it a revelation sort of puzzle where solving it is just gives you information, gives you enlightenment, and epiphany, if you will. Um, we have not set up the BBEG to be. It's definitely on the difficult side of our encounter building here, and so it's going to be challenging. Um, and so I don't think we need to, but it's not too challenging. So I don't think we need something that's like, you can't defeat the villain unless you figure this out. Um, which is suitable in some adventures, but I don't think we need it for this one. So I think maybe it just locks away a boon. And Jonathan says, "Psychic moment, potion of lightning resistance is what I was thinking." LOL. Yeah, I think that's a cool little reward for us to do here. And who can resist a good puzzle door? So we're gonna say reward. The puzzle. Let's see here. The puzzle, once solved, reveals a cache of We don't want to do it for everybody in the party. Maybe we say of 2 potions of lightning resistance. We'll of course go back and add other treasure as we go through this. Let me change that just for nomenclature's sake to say treasure. Okay. Okay, so what kind of puzzle are we going to get here? We don't have to get too crazy over this. Um, I don't want to do it for this because I want us to come up with something that's uniquely our own. But I will frequently, if I'm stuck in a moment and I'm building this for a session that it's going to run tomorrow or something like that, and I need a puzzle now, and I'm kind of drawing a blank on it, I will frequently go to the puzzle section of Tasha's, and I'll just reskin something that's in there. The number of times that I have done that and been able to take one of the puzzles that's in there and sort of reskin it to the situation and make it feel very organic. I've never had players ever notice that that's what I was doing. It's a really cool tool. But since we are about creating things that are kind of our own, let's come up with a puzzle that is, um, or a challenge of some kind that is entirely uniquely us. So, we can go a couple different ways with this. Um, I frequently lean on riddles because I find them relatively easy to write. Um, but I will say that riddles are they work really well if you have players who like riddles, right? If you have players who are into kind of that wordplay and figuring it out and the clues that go along with that, then riddles are great. They're easy to toss in here. They're relatively easy to make. You just do a couple rhyming lines around a solution word, um, and uh, and characters guess the players guess the answer, and huzzah! They feel like geniuses. They figured it out. If you have players that are not into riddles, are not don't their brains just don't kind of work in that way. Riddles can be wholly unsatisfying because while you can still do things like you have your characters do intelligence checks to come up with clues and hints and that kind of thing, um, then it's you can get them through it, but they don't feel like they figured anything out exactly, and so it feels just kind of like a letdown. So maybe we want to do a riddle, maybe we don't want to do a riddle. Looks like we get another comment from Jonathan. It says, "If it was created by a mage order that was destroyed, this is an opportunity for to world build and define them a little bit more." It absolutely is, and that is a very good point. So, hmm, cloistered order of mages in possession of incredible power at one point, destroyed by the coming of this domain of dread and the flooding of this inland of this basin that has now become the inland sea. So, what is it that what do we want? What do we know about them, or what do we think they would be like? Um, this might require us to do a little brainstorming on them, because it is a really sound point that this is a good opportunity for some world building and not just a um, let's stick with the theme kind of situation. So let's come over to find because we started doing some of um, the brainstorming about our group of mages here, or at least about the dungeon itself and about the situation in which we find the artifact. Um, so let's brainstorm about the cloister themselves. Let's say heading. Is this what kind of heading is that? That's heading 2. Let's make this a heading 3 then. And so we're going to say cloistered order of mages brainstorming. Okay, so we got a couple comments from Jonathan again, who says suggests astronomers, astrologers, cosmologists, perhaps. It could be an orrery. The celestial objects depicted needed to be arranged in a particular configuration, celestial or planar objects. Um, yeah, those are all good ideas. Um, hmm. I didn't mean to trail off there and just kind of like, oh yeah, those are good ideas. No, those are very good ideas, and you've got my gears turning because maybe we need to think about what brought about this domain of dread. I mean, obviously, it is here to imprison Ovander, but what were the circumstances that brought it into existence? Um, did this happen as a result of some of the work of this cloister of mages? Were they dabbling in planar magic that they couldn't control or shouldn't have been dabbling in? Um, if so, then yeah, it makes a lot of sense for them to be, planar researchers of some kind, um, and maybe they opened up this world to become the domain of dread that it is, inviting the elemental villain Ovander in from another plane of existence, and causing this place to become sealed off as his prison. Um, yeah, I think you're onto something there, Jonathan. I think that you are. Okay. So, um, so let's say, just for argument's sake, we'll say that um, the cloistered order um, was focused on understanding the cosmos by studying the planes of existence themselves. In their hubris, they dabbled in planar magic that they could not control, and the result was opening their world to the evil that was Ovander. The resulting cataclysm reshaped the world, and Ovander and became Ovander's prison. Cool. Jonathan says perhaps a sacrificial act. Yeah, they could do something along those lines. I like the idea. I like the idea of the orrery. And I'm probably mispronouncing that word, but I really do like that idea of having this maybe a map of the cosmos on the walls that have been kind of that are like a series of interlocking discs, and that they need to be rearranged and aligned in a particular way. Um, yeah. Um, we need to have a way for the characters to know that information, but that's something that we could, those are seeds we can plant throughout our dungeon environment here as we go, in the uh, in some of the sort of thematic spaces and some of the depictions and the decor. We can leave these little clues behind in the various spaces here. So let us go ahead and get back over to our dungeon, our little 5-room dungeon here. And let's say puzzle. Oop. That's a link to my Discord if anybody cares. All right, so let's say puzzle. Let's say on the wall of this room is a door that this is a let's say is a brass door. It features a series of interlocking rings. Each ring bears a different planar object, and the rings can be turned to solve the puzzle. Characters must align the rings in their proper order. I should say in their proper positions. Because of course, if these are interlocking, if these are, rings within rings within rings, right? Turn them around, they're not going to change order, as it were. But they can change positions and sort of how the kind of how the different planes are kind of outlined. So something that we can do for that, if we are building off of something like the system of planes in the Forgotten Realms, which for something like this I would encourage us to do. We could, I think that there is an image of that in the 2014 Player's Handbook. Let's take a look. And again, I'm not gonna, show the picture on screen here because intellectual property, but Appendix C, and they do have a graphic of interlocking rings that lay out the various planes. Going from positive, negative plane, the astral plane, the planes of law, planes of chaos, lower planes, upper planes, Feywild, Shadowfell, material plane, all that kind of good stuff here. Page 303 in the 2014 Player's Handbook, if you are so inclined to check that out. But we could use that. So we could have some of these planes marked out on the rings and that they need to be oriented into various positions. Bonus points, if you were playing this in person, would be to actually kind of build this out of like maybe cardboard, like construction paper or something, and so you can kind of have this this dial on the table that the players can move things into position for. But let's keep the positions relatively straightforward. So things like up, top, left, bottom, right, that kind of stuff. To so that if we were doing this theater of the mind, we can orient that as well. So let's say material plane plane is a button in the center. Once the puzzle is solved, the button can be pressed to open the door. And we're going to say around the button, around the material plane, are a number of other, are a selection of other planes. Let's see. They include, we should definitely have the elemental planes in there. Since this is kind of an elemental place. So, of other selection of other planes, they include the, should say, of other planes in the following order, radiating outward from the center. And we're going to say air, water, earth, fire. Actually, we should probably put those all on one because they're kind of positioned around. So let's say air, water, earth, fire form one ring. Then let's do, there's another ring inside that. If I look at this, let's not skip the Feywild and Shadowfell. Then let's say the how many rings do we want to do if we want to do this? Maybe, I don't think we need to do more than 3 or 4. Let's do 3 because there's a ton of planes of existence out there, right? And so we can have, button in the center. We've got Feywild and Shadowfell on one ring, and you've got to get those in the right orientation. And then we've got the air, water, earth, fire planes on another ring. We got to get that in the right orientation. Then we have a third one that we need to get in the right place. And so we're going to put just a selection of them on here. We're going to say Elysium, Limbo. Definitely have to have Limbo on there. We're going to say Hades. And then we'll say Mechanus. And I picked those because they are the 4 cardinal points on this circle here, right? If you're following along on that page. With Elysium at the top. So if this was, compass rose, Elysium would be the north position. Limbo would be east. Hades would be south. And then you would have Mechanus to the west. And so we can have these so that they're kind of all out of order. And now the characters have to rotate these into position. And the order in which I've written them here would be the correct order in which they need to be from top to bottom. So Feywild on top, Shadowfell on bottom. Air and water in kind of the upper, air in the, what would be the upper left, water in the upper right, earth in the bottom right, fire in the bottom left, and then Elysium, Limbo, Hades, Mechanus. And I guess if I'm going to capitalize one of these, I should capitalize all of them. Cool. All right. So that gives us kind of our little puzzle here. And we are over our time. We've gone a little longer than we normally do. We got into a cool track, so happy to do that. But thank you so much for watching. Again, please, if you want to check out some of my games, come see me on startplaying.games/GM/RJ Kerr. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. All that stuff helps me, one, stay motivated to do this, and two, helps the channel grow and keeps bringing new viewers into this, which is always a good time. Um, we will continue with this on Wednesday as we normally do. And so if you're watching this in real time, that's going to be Wednesday, the 26th of February. And then again, we'll do Monday, the 3rd of March. So those will be our next two episodes if you're watching this as they're released. But thank you again for joining our 50th episode of Let's Write an Adventure. This is really exciting for me that we've gotten so many of those in. Looking forward to doing another 50 of them with you. So thank you again, and I will talk to all of you soon.